The question is, what order do we attack them? Because I think it's one of those things that going on all fronts at once is going to limit success. So like for me, the environment is a really important issue. $50 minimum wage is an important issue. Education is an important issue. Everything else needs to be addressed, and we need to focus on it. But I don't want to do the proverb, like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Okay.
So along those lines, I'm going to ask you a question that covers all of them.
Okay.
Okay, which is, and by the way, I must say this, I'm a printer, I didn't print your stuff, but I like your presentation, very good.
Thank you.
Which is similar, I did Patricio's, which is similar with the bold lettering, but let me get off that. So, you know, one of the main ways that the conservatives restrict progressive change is by putting, for all their talk about local, you know, local control, they put restrictions on cities and municipalities from protecting the minimum wage, protecting the environment, protecting safety regulations. Would you be for rolling back all of that legislation that prevents local control, you know, or protections of the environment and workers' living standards and so on?
Yes. The one thing that I would actually want to switch is zoning and building codes. One of the problems that I see, like one of the reasons we have a problem with affordable housing, is how most municipalities do it and most counties do it, is it's what can you build. And so you have to have a certain number of parking spots per building. You have to do everything a certain way. And if we switched it, so instead of saying what you have to do, like here are the 13 things you cannot do. And here's the rule for when it's zoned residential. Here's what you can do. Here's what you do in mixed use. I'm basing this off of how Japan does it. And they have a very, very progressive idea on zoning. And if they don't have they have a country the size of California, half our population, half of it's too mountainous for people to live on. And they don't have housing problems that we do. And I really think it's down to the zoning. So yes, on everything, I think it needs to go to the local level as possible. The one thing I would take away from local is zoning. Does that answer?
Yeah, I mean, zoning's a two-edged sword.
It is. It absolutely is. It's very politically tenuous for me to say this. I understand.
Right. I mean, to me, the main thing is controlling obviously the money, the big moneyed interests that, you know, are pushing for basically having real estate for the rich.
Yeah.
And denying it to the poor.
Yes. And this isn't something that I would want to, like, obviously, if I'm going to fortunate enough to win and go to Tallahassee, we're going to be in a minority still. So it's not something like, this is more if I were king, what I would want to do with that. But again, it's back to the elephant. You take on what you can. And wherever you can make a step of progress, that's what you focus on.
No, I was just saying
Could you identify yourself, your first name, last name, the position?
Myself as, my name is James Linwood Schulman. I am a Democrat. I'm running for State House. Is that what you mean?
District.
Yeah.
District 115.
Which district?
115. It runs from Doral through Palmetto Bay.
Do you have a question?
No.
Michael? Winnie, you have a question?
Well, I think when you go to Tallahassee, we have one issue for the DACA for the driver license, and I think for the last few years, then we have not been successfully to moving that forward because a lot of that's relating to the immigration issues. A lot of all those young people or anybody immigrant, we need to have we need to have a driver license to go to work.
Absolutely.
But I think all this time that in the Tallahassee, we've been advocating it, but still haven't really successful. So how you can help to move this agenda forward to be able to see the light of it?
The way I see it is immigration, like the immigration law, enforcing immigration law is a federal issue. The state needs to focus on the people that live in the state. And so if people need to have a driver's license, they need to have ID for X, Y, Z reasons, we should be providing that ID. It's not our job to enforce immigration laws through how we do our license.
Right, but only one thing, a lot of representative up there,
Yeah.
and they may clearly see the way you just say, but
Mhm.
you need to know how you could be a champion to help to move this forward. Because we understanding immigration is a federal issue.
Yeah.
But however, still that federal issue will impact to the local people.
So one of the things for me is, honestly, the way I see myself is someone like, I want to just make progress happen. I don't care about getting credit for it. So I am happy giving someone else the idea. If them getting credit for it makes it so it's actually possible to get the law through, I am all for giving them credit. I'm happy to be in the background. So if that's what it takes to get a bill through, by all means.
Right, but as a Democrat, how you might see yourself to work bipartisan area to get what you just say, to get some of those policies to.
One of the things I always try and do is, especially when I'm talking to people that are more conservative, is I try and use it in economic terms and say, here's the economic benefit of doing this, and here's why we need to approach this problem. So like when you're talking about the minimum wage, talking about, to oversimplify economics, we have supply, we have demand. And for the last 30, 40 years, we've been focusing on the supply side of economics, and that's why we have such bad income inequality and all this. If we want to grow the economy, we need to focus on demand side, and so that's why we need to raise the minimum wage. All of a sudden, all these people that are at the bottom that don't have enough money to make ends meet, you give them a little bit of a raise, because they're not going to get rich on the $50 an hour salary, but they're going to be able to make ends meet. The things that have been going without for a while, they'll be able to purchase. And this is going to spur the economy and be a huge driver. So like for this instance, what I would want to talk about is the economic value of making sure that people actually have licenses. So these people aren't stuck without a job. They're able to actually get where they need to go. They're able to be productive members of society. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Rodrigo, you have a question? Have a question? Okay. Victor? And Ed.
You might have said something about Medicaid expansion, but I didn't catch it. You support Medicaid expansion?
Yes, I do, absolutely. What I would like to do, so I like the idea of single payer. I like it at the federal level, though. I don't think the state is the right place for that. I don't want to wait for the federal government to get their act together on that, though. So what I'm advocating for is turning Medicaid into a public option. So Nevada got really, really close last year to doing this. So because Medicaid's administered at the state level, it's very, very easy with a swipe of a pen saying, hey, we can accept it. So yeah, you can file paperwork to get Medicaid, and you pay the regular rate. And we do that, and all of a sudden, it's not the best insurance by any means, but it's anyone that has a high deductible plan, I do, I don't know if you guys do or not, they don't cover anything. It's if I have an accident and I lose my finger, like it should be covered and I don't have to spend $10,000 on that. So Medicaid isn't much better, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper. So it's like I'd be saving, I think it was like $6,000 a year, $7,000 a year, just for my high deductible family plan to move my family to Medicaid. So.
Ed, Sheila, Peter, and then Dimitris. Ed.
I don't have one of your handouts. What's in your background? Tell us a little bit. What makes you want to be there? What forces are should we say, hey, he's good at, as opposed to your opponent and the incumbent? Why you?
So, very good question.
I don't really, I'm impressed hearing you here, but I know nothing about who you are, where you came from, what credential, what talent you bring to the office.
So my wife and I, we own a business together. We own a marketing company. She's from Miami. She brought me back after we met in college. She brought me back here. We moved here 7 years ago, in 2011. I've always cared passionately about politics. I've never considered running until Trump won, and I saw that was a call to arms. Anyone that can do something needs to do something, and so I felt the call to step up and see what I can do and see if I can make a difference. What separates me from other candidates, I honestly, I don't see myself as being a politician, even if I'm fortunate enough to win. And I know everyone says this kind of thing, but I actually want to represent people. What I've discovered when I've been canvassing is there's a lot of people that live in my district. They have really good solutions. They have really good ideas on how we can tackle these problems. And they see where things could go wrong. So like one of the people I was talking to, he's an attorney. He negotiates between insurance companies and hospitals. on their billing. So like, to me, like the evil reason why we have healthcare problems that we do. But he's very, very liberal, and what he was telling me was, here's the 9 places where you need to fix Medicaid as a public option, because here's why it's not going to work in these instances. So like, he has the expertise. I met another woman, she's a botanist, and what she was telling me is, we can't put the power lines underground because it's going to destroy the root structure of the trees. So if we're going to do that, we have to be very, very careful about how we bore the holes to put the power lines underground. So my whole thing is, like, I actually want to represent, I want to listen, and I want to advocate for the people. I have my own ideas, but I don't need to pursue them. I need to pursue what you guys want.
Sheila, Peter, Demetrius, and then.
Well, he has 3 minutes of questions, but I'm not running the clock when I'm asking.
Okay.
I have a 2-prong question. And it may not be fair because you may not have any idea about this, and that's fine. Okay, I appreciate that you would get your analysis from folks that are experts. So my first question is, are you taking or will you take corporate money? Second question pertains to healthcare. You mentioned that you get very little coverage for the amount that you're paying into what you're paying for your insurance. Now, we all know that going to the hospital is expensive, like you stated. It's expensive because the charge master, what is the coding and billing for the fees and services when patients go into a corporate hospital is secret. So, for instance, you can go get treated at Jackson for a heart attack, $5,000. You go to Baptist, it's $100,000. There's no regulatory policies in place that requires these corporations to be more transparent with their fees, and also they're very poorly regulated in terms of consumer protection. Outside of JCO, there's very little there. So what would you do if you went into office to, 1, make sure that corporations stop exploiting patients like natural resources, and 2, will you be taking corporate funds?
So, no, not taking corporate funds. Like, some of my friends are business owners, and so they've donated, but they're local small business attorneys, like small practices. But no, like not from corporate money. To answer your question, Maryland actually has a really good program for this. The name, I can't remember the term they use to describe it, but it's transparent pricing. So you're not saying that every hospital has to have the same price for the same procedure, but they have to have the same price for every patient that comes in for that procedure. And it's brought down costs. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it's been trimming down the growth of medical costs significantly in the last 5 or 6 years. So it's it's a good step in the right direction, and that's something I would definitely be advocating for, because you're absolutely right. Like, my daughter had tubes put in her ears, and we went to the hospital. It was Baptist, because that's where the doctor. Our insurance only accepted our doctor at that hospital. So anyway, we went in, and the day of the surgery was like 6 in the morning, and we asked them how much it was going to be. They could not tell us. And they just said, you have to go, we're going to do it, and then we're going to charge you whatever we want at the end. Because they had no idea what the price was going to be. Fortunately, like, we're in a position that is not going to destroy us. We're not going to get evicted from our home when that bill came in. But that's absurd. That's not how, like, business should not operate this way.
Peter?
We have, here in the United States, we have the military government that's having all their military bases taken away, going to be moved away from the Atlantic and the Pacific in like 100 miles. And, okay, that's one aspect. And the other is, here in Florida or in Miami, what will you do to help those people in case there's a flood such as what I'm talking about?
You're talking about sea level rise?
Sea level rise.
So this is the existential threat facing us over the next 50 years.
Right.
So this is a little pie in the sky, so bear with me. But what I would be advocating for is a carbon tax. So the idea is it's $40 per metric ton of carbon emitted. This averages out to about 55 cents for the average driver. What I would want to do, and this alone, that would raise about $9 billion a year for the state of Florida. What I'd want to do is I would want to cut that a little bit. I want to have returns to people that make less than the median household income in the state, to make sure we're not actually hurting the people that really need the help the most. The rest of the funds, though, I would want to use to mitigate the effects of climate change. So the idea is this would be threefold. First, This would stop us from making the problem worse. It would encourage us to not pollute because you don't pay a tax if you don't pollute. Second, there are known solutions for like saltwater intrusion into the aquifer, and there's known solutions for like how we can fix stormwater infrastructure. It exists. It's just expensive. This would raise the funds so we could actually afford to do that and make sure we can protect ourselves. It would also, one of the things I would want to do is, if you look at like the National Flood Insurance Program, the same properties are the ones that are flooding every year. We know where the sinkholes are, where the water is going. We need to buy those lands and turn it into parks. And stop paying to rebuild the same houses. Buy it at market value, let the people move, but then turn it into public property. And then third is, and this is one of the things I think that our biggest challenge with climate change, is everyone's afraid on the other side of the aisle of talking about the damage to the economy. And that's why they're so scared about actually doing anything. But we need to talk about the actual opportunities that the economy comes with climate change. So over the next 50 years, to me, I think the biggest growth industry is engineering based on sea level rise. So these funds that we can get from a carbon tax could be used to jumpstart a local industry, what I call water engineering. So in the Netherlands, they've obviously been doing this for centuries, and it's about 2% of their exports. We are a natural home for that kind of business too. So we could use this and actually move forward on that.
We have two more questions. Dimitris and Catherine, right?
Right. Yeah, thanks for being here. What are your thoughts on stand your ground laws and assault weapons?
Stand your ground is a racist law, like just to be blunt, and it needs to be repealed. We already have a right to defend ourselves. Like that is inherent. So what stand your ground does is it makes the burden of proof so hard to solve that anyone can just shoot anyone at any time. Like it's absurd. Assault weapons, I think the first thing we need to do, we need to make steps in the right direction. So everyone, or it's not universal, it's practically universal, universal background checks are a good thing, and reducing magazine size is a good thing. Those are the things that I would want to do first. I would love to get licensing for guns and make sure that gun sellers have liability if those guns they sell are used in a crime. As for assault weapons, I would love to get them off the streets. We need to. That is going to be very, very hard to do, and I don't want to get bogged down fighting that fight when we can save lives in the meantime on universal background checks, reducing magazine size, and all the other little things that everyone already, or practically everyone already agrees on.
Christine?
Hi, I'm going to take us back to one of the questions over here.
Yeah.
I'm going to start by saying that you speak very well. You project. You're thinking and everything. But I don't feel like I know who you are. I mean, now I know that your wife brought you here. But where did you come from? What did you study? And what kind of a business do you have?
So one of the things, like, I'm happy to talk about myself, but like I don't want this campaign to be about me. I understand it's important. My wife and I, we own a marketing company. So we're all about branding and communication and messaging. And one of the things that I see as the biggest problem in politics is we get centered on identity of the candidate, not on the issues. So that's why I've been going this way. But to answer your question, so I was born in DC. I was raised in Colorado. I met my wife in college at the University of Colorado. She was in Miami, and we wanted to write books. We wanted to be novelists. I've always liked Hemingway. I've always liked F. Scott Fitzgerald. That was my dream. That's what I wanted to do with my life. After the recession, we were fortunate, and we had some money saved up. And so we wanted to try and actually seriously see if we could write novels. We moved to Argentina because it was cheap at the time in 2009. And we tried it for a year. She was in marketing beforehand, so she knew a lot of people in marketing. And if you know marketing, a lot of people that are in that industry are failed novelists. So everyone thought it was so romantic that we're doing this. And they sent us like freelance writing gigs on the side, just like, hey, like, can you write this ad copy for us? Can you do this for us? They loved the work, and we realized we actually had an actual business on our hands. So we're looking on how we're going to actually make this work. She's from here. My mother-in-law owned a print shop for like 25, 30 years here. We knew the small business community in Miami was really, really strong. And so we're like, we're not really ready to move back to the States, so why don't we move to Miami? and that was 2011, and we've been here since. We have 2 young kids. My son Oliver is 4. My daughter Emerson is 2. They are, I like bragging. I think they're adorable.
Where are you from then?
Where am I from?
Yeah.
I grew up in Colorado.
Colorado.
Yeah, so Colorado Springs is where I went to high school. It's the conservative capital of the country. There are more mega churches there than anywhere else in the country. It was a very interesting upbringing because my parents actually met at a Vietnam peace protest, and they got married 3 months later. So they're not hippies, but they're very, very, very progressive. And then work took my dad and us to Colorado Springs, and so that was a very, very interesting community. But I learned how to talk to conservatives, and that's why I learned about talking about things in economic terms, and that's how they understand. That's how you can actually agree on issues.
Okay, we're